Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama इसका मुरली की जाए, Srila Prabhupada की जाए, की जाए, week of Shravan की जाए. Has everyone been hearing well, yeah? And the ears works. So interestingly, well, it kind of reinforces the whole dynamic of reading. What's happening when you're reading is there's a dialogue going on between you, Srila Prabhupada, Krishna, the different personalities being described in the things that you're reading. And so at whatever time, whatever book, in whatever circumstance you're reading, there's a message there, which is very appropriate to you right now at this point in time. So that's the dynamic of whereas the contrast is when we're talking to mundane people about mundane things, it doesn't really have anything to do with anything, even if it seems to be very much appropriate to what's going on right now. It doesn't really touch the real situation, the real issue. So that's the amazing thing about reading is you can read the book over and over and over again, and every time you read it, there'll be a different thing that will strike you, because at that particular time, there's a particular thing that you need to hear, which you didn't need to hear the last time you read it, so it didn't strike you. So there's so we'll read this verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's first canto, chapter 2, Divinity and Divine Service, text 32. Yata hi avahito vanir yata yamani hito vanir durush Eka swa yonishu darushveka swan yonishu naneva bhati vishvatma naneva bhati vishvatma.
Bhuteshu cha tata
puman. Bhuteshu cha tata puman.
Bhuteshu cha tata puman.
Yataya vahito vanya.
Yataya vahito vanya.
Dureshevaka swayam yonishu.
Dureshvika swayoneshu.
Naneva bhati vishvatma.
Maneva bhati vishvatma.
Bhuteshu cha tata puman.
Bhuteshu cha tata puman.
Yataya vahito vanya.
Yataya vahito vanya.
Durushveka swayonishu.
Durushvika swayoneshu.
Naneva bhati vishvatma.
Naneva bhati vishvatma.
Bhuteshu cha tata puman.
Bhuteshu cha tata puman. Yataya vahito vanya. Yonishu Naneva bhati vishvatma. Bhuteshu chatata puman. Yataya vahito vanya. Darushvika swayonishu. Naneva bhati vishvatma. Bhuteshu cha tata puman. Darushvika swayonishu. Naneva bhati vishvatma. Bhuteshu cha tata puman. Darushvika swayoneshu. Naneva bhati vishvatma. Bhuteshu cha tata puman.
Yata,
As
much
as
he, exactly like
Avahita,
surcharged with
Vani,
fire,
Darushu,
in wood,
Eka, one,
Swayonishu, the source of manifestation, Naiva, like different entities, Bhati, illuminates, Vishva Atma, the Lord is Paramatma, Bhuteshu, in the living entities, Cha,
and
Tata, in the same way,
Puman,
the absolute person.
The
Lord as super soul pervades all things, just as fire permeates wood, and so he appears to be of many varieties, though he is the absolute one without a second. Responsibly, please. The Lord as super soul pervades all things, just as fire permeates wood, and so he appears to be of many varieties, though he is the absolute, one without a second.
One without a second.
Lord Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by one of his plenary parts, expands himself all over the material world, and his existence can be perceived even within the atomic energy. Matter, antimatter, proton, neutron, etc. are all different effects of the Paramatma feature of the Lord. As from wood, fire can be manifested, or as butter can be churned out of milk, so also the presence of the Lord as Paramatma can be felt by the process of legitimate hearing and chanting of the transcendental subjects, which are especially treated in the Vedic literatures like the Upanishad and the Vedanta. So we'll come back to this word in a minute, legitimate. Srimad Bhagavatam is the bona fide explanation of these Vedic literatures. The Lord can be realized through the oral reception of the transcendental message, and that is the only way to experience the transcendental subject. As fire is kindled from wood by another fire, the divine consciousness of man can similarly be kindled by another divine grace. His divine grace, the spiritual master, can kindle the spiritual fire from the wood-like living entity by imparting proper spiritual messages injected through the receptive ear. Therefore, one is required to approach the proper spiritual master with receptive ears only, and thus divine existence is gradually realized. The difference between animality and humanity lies in this process only. A human being can hear properly, whereas an animal cannot. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchikapatruvischa Kripasindhivya Harinam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. The Lord, as Super Soul, pervades all things, just as fire permeates wood, and so he appears to be of many varieties, though is the absolute one without a second. So Prabhupada uses the word legitimate in the purport, as opposed to illegitimate. So if something is illegitimate, then it's not from an authorized source. So it's a warning that to hear, to practice Shravanam properly, then there's a certain prerequisites that have to be there. And if they're not there, then the hearing won't be properly attuned. The illegitimate hearing, as unscrupulous people will immediately go to the 10th canto and the 5 chapters, especially dealing with the Rasa Leela, and they'll like this because it seems like something erotic to them, and so they won't get the real benefit, which is to become free from the effects of ignorance and the effects of passion, which are there in the heart. And there is a verse somewhere, I couldn't find it just now, but it refers to this hearing to be like autumnal rains. So when the little ponds on the face of the mountain become filled with dirty things, when the autumnal rains come down, and it washes those reservoirs of water clear. But it has to be a legitimate hearing. That is the effect. And if it's not, then it becomes contaminated. And then we don't get the benefit, which is to become free from lust. In fact, it can increase the lusty propensity of the living entity. So it's referred to that devotional service begins by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Has anyone ever heard that one before? Devotional service begins by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's how important hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is. The beginning of devotional service is to spare time and listen to Srimad Bhagavatam from the right source, and that's from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, chapter 19, text 38. The beginning of devotional service is to spare some time and listen to Srimad Bhagavatam from the right source. So Lord Chaitanya instructed the Goswamis to give immense literatures, and it's referred to that these literatures chalk out the path of devotional service. So that's interesting to chalk something out, because to chalk something out is like to give you the basic. Well, this is from Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto. The Goswamis of Vrindavan made immense literatures of transcendental science for our benefit. They have chalked out ways for all classes of men. So to chalk out is to give you a general path, and then you follow that path and you fill in what has been chalked out with realization by going along that path. So that's Lord Chaitanya. His plan was to revive And it's interesting, Shiv Ramesh was talking, he said, if you're ever doing something and you're not successful, don't be too hard on yourself. Because Krishna came down 5,000 years ago, and he had a purpose. He wanted everyone to know about Madhurya Ras and devotional service and all the intimate aspects. And his mission wasn't successful. He tasted, he came down and he tasted. And it's referred to that there's a special taste, just like if you have a diamond on a white piece of cloth. It's nice, but if you have the diamond on a black piece of cloth, then it's stunning. So in the spiritual world, everything's wonderful and everyone's perfect. So when Krishna does something, you know, it's nice, but it's like a diamond on a white background. But when Krishna comes into the material world and he does something, then it really stands out. It's really different from the stark contrast of the black cloth, the material energy in the background. So that's the significance. Krishna came down, performed his pastimes. It was amazing. It was a diamond on a black background, but very few caught on the significance of what had just taken place. So then Lord Chaitanya came, and then Lord Chaitanya had a whole strategy, how the Goswamis were going to rediscover all the sacred places, all the holy Dharma, and then give us literatures to chalk out the path for all classes of people, for all the different types of people and what's amazing about Srila Prabhupada's books is that all types of people can read the books and they'll all get the understanding in their own way and become inspired to take up devotional service. And that inspiration is referred to here as like fire. The fire is there. Everyone can get fired up, but it's how to ignite the fire. In the books, Srila Prabhupada's books are there to ignite the fire. Now, Prabhupada did say also, he said, my books are only word jugglery to get you to chant Hare Krishna. So if you put your bead bag on in the morning and you're really, really fired up to chant, then you've been reading the books properly. But if you put the bead bag on in the morning and you're just wishing it was 7 o'clock or even 8:30, so you can get into something a bit more interesting, something you can get your teeth into instead, then you need to read the books again. You're either not reading them, or you're reading them, but you're not reading them properly. You're not assimilating the information properly, because they have these chemical processes, and it goes through pipette after pipette after pipette, and eventually what comes out is this drop of distilled, essential, whatever it is, that they're trying to make, whiskey or whatever it is. But it's distilled down. So what should come out of the books is this intense desire to want to chant. And if it's not, you have to go back to the books and put it back through all the pipettes until it comes out on the other end. And you're fired up to chant. So that's the fire that's dormant within everybody. And everybody does love Krishna deep, deep down inside. And that love just needs to be evoked and stimulated. Just like with a child, no matter how hard you try, you're not going to teach that child to fly. You can put super glue feathers on its arms, kick it off tall buildings, spin it around with a bungee cord. It's never going to get it, because it can't fly. And on the other hand, the child can walk. No matter how many times it fails, eventually it will learn to walk, because that's its innate capacity. So we are all pure lovers of Krishna, and we are not enjoyers and we're not controllers, however hard we try. So the books are to remind and retrain us, rewire us, so that we can remember, actually I'm a walker, I can walk, although it doesn't feel like I can. And that will encourage us to continue on until we get to the point where we become steady. And then once we're steady, then we can start to run. And when we're running, that's when there's ruchi. When a man's running underwater, he's trying really hard, but when he comes out, he's going really, really fast. So for some of us right now, we're running underwater, so it's very hard. But if we continue on, and that fire is evoked, and we become ablaze with Krishna consciousness and an intense desire to want to chant and take shelter of the holy names. It's said that if we actually knew what the holy name was when we were chanting, then our heart would be like a stampeding horse. If we actually knew what it was when we were chanting, what it is we're getting a chance to experience, then the heart would be like a stampeding horse. Interesting, right? So, first of all, there's Kirtanam, because before we can Shravanam, someone has to, Srila Prabhupada has to write the books, and Srila Prabhupada is writing what the previous acharyas, what Srila Vyasadevas wrote. So first of all, there's Kirtanam, and then we hear the Kirtanam, Shravanam, and then through purification, then Smaranam can take place. We start to retain, we start to remember. So the ability to retain is dependent upon how pure the heart is. If the heart is very impure, then we can't retain very much. So we're trying to cleanse the heart so that we can have a lasting impression. And this ability to remember is an interesting, it's a turning point, a pivotal change in our spiritual lives is at that point where you're suddenly able to start remembering, start retaining. So that all day you're thinking of Krishna, all day the holy names on your tongue. And this is a letter by Srila Prabhupada in 1972. Service to the deities, as you are asking me, begins whenever you remember them and offer all your services by remembering at the same time. All activities, words, everything should be offered as service to the deities. And this offering with the remembering will gradually increase as you practice it. So, that's an interest, because we talk about being Krishna conscious. We want to be conscious of Krishna. So, before we can be directly perceive Krishna's presence, we're training by remembering. And then, in fact, Srila Prabhupada, he explains whether one factually sees or whether one imagines, one must fix his mind on the form of Vishnu. Whether you're imagining or if you can factually see, one way or another, you have to fix your mind on the form of Vishnu. So the deities are helping us to do that, and the books are helping us to do that, to help us fix and retain, keep that memory, keep it burning. It's interesting, in previous yugas, there's different yuga dharmas, different practices. And in Kali Yuga, the Yuga Dharma is Harinam Sankirtan. And the fire that we want to keep burning is the chanting of the holy name. It's like if you're doing a yoga and someone comes along and says, the police have just told us we've got to stop this. And they throw a blanket over the fire. And the Brahmins say, well, we're going to continue on. Swaha. And they're just pouring ghee on the blanket, you know. Swaha. No one's stopping us. We're going to continue. There's just some smoke coming out. Fire's gone out, and well, it's kind of getting over. Just the fire's gone out. So you may be doing all your different practices, but if the holy name is not there, then the fire's gone out. Keep the fire burning. That's what Vaisheshika says. Keep the fire burning all the time. Stoke it all the time. Keep chanting. Keep remembering, and then devotional service is counted. So that's the challenge. So by studying Srila Prabhupada's books, what actually happens is we acquire knowledge. This is in the Nectar of Devotion. The more saturated with knowledge one's devotional practices are, the more potent they become, increasing material detachment. So if we're doing something we don't really know why we're doing it, we're just doing it, then it will have some benefit, but it will be minimal benefit. And if we know exactly why we're doing something, then it will have more benefit, it will be more potent. So the books are to help enriching our chanting, our devotional service, our deity worship. All these become enriching by hearing and studying nicely. So basically it's making it more, we'll get more benefit out of what we're doing the more we're doing it with knowledge. And that's a nice expression, the more saturated with knowledge. It makes you think of knowledge as like having a container full of liquid. Oh, what have you got in that cup? Well, it's knowledge. I'm just going to saturate myself with it. So if you're not saturated with knowledge, then you dry out. And then things become very dry, parched. Deva Amrita Maharaj refers to that in the book Bhava Bhakti. He says, as you go on in devotional service, the anxiety is, will I find emotional fulfillment for my heart? And Maya's tapping you on the shoulder and saying, how long have you been doing this now? 20 years. 20 years. You getting any taste out of it? Not a lot. What do you think about the next 20 years? Probably not much. And then Maya says, but don't worry, I've got a few things we can get into just now, just to keep everything a bit juicy. And I've got your back. And Krishna won't mind. You're still believing in that. Just want to give you a bit of some juicy stuff to keep you going. So this is what Maya is saying. But the heart that's parched, it's only when it's saturated with transcendental knowledge, that's actually what will satisfy. Otherwise we'll be misled. The mirage looks like it's got water there, and it is water that we want, but you won't get any water in the mirage. We need to go to the ocean to find the pleasure that we're looking for. So there is a philosophy that was propounded quite some time ago, which was that we don't have to worry about all this reading stuff. I mean, some people have to read, the fuddy-duddies and the real neophytes, but once you've got it, then that's it, You don't really need to read, you just need to really chant and just get into it, bro. That's all you do. I mean, really, what is it? Just get into it. As long as you get into it. And then you'll be okay, and you'll make automatic advancement. You don't have to mess about reading and learning all these slokas. Just get into it, work hard, you make automatic advancement. So that's referred to in Sudha Bhakti Chintamani. Automatic advancement is a natural part of, rather than an alternative to, educated efforts to attain perfection. Did everyone get that one? Automatic advancement is a natural part of, rather than an alternative to, educated efforts to attain perfection. So the educated efforts to attain perfection will bring automatic advancement. It's not that there's automatic advancement or educated efforts. Which one would you like? They're part of each other. I think I'll forget the educated effort. I'm just going to go over automatic advancement. Thank you very much. Looks a bit easier. So, an educated effort is you acquire the knowledge, you assimilate the knowledge, and you implement the knowledge. You start implementing it. Because we all know matra swastistikam taya. We all know that. Don't be disturbed. But when we go out in the rain, how many are not disturbed? Oh, it's raining. You just said matra swastistikam. I know the sloka, but I know if you know the sloka, you're supposed to not be bothered. You're supposed to tolerate it without being disturbed. Well, I'm tolerating it, aren't I? Well, you are tolerating it, but you're really disturbed. So then you're going to go back to the sloka without being disturbed. Okay, so how am I going to do that? I'm going to have to become ready, whether it's a non-permanent appearance, it's going to come and it's going to go. So that's the distance from the mind to the heart. It's the longest distance in the universe. It goes in there, it makes sense, but it doesn't go in here. doesn't make sense on an emotional level. So how are we going to read the books, understand the books, and then feel the books, get into the right emotion? Because there is a movement, and a movement means there's motion, and motion is triggered by emotion. If there's no emotion, then I mean, do you see many people falling asleep at a horror film? Oh, you're about to. I mean, you don't see people falling asleep at horror. They're all because their emotion has been stimulated. So if you're reading and you're Krishna is God, we're going to say and there's not a lot of emotion being invoked, so it's all making sense on the mental platform, but it's not going in. Krishna, I'm going to serve Krishna. Otherwise I'll be in Maya. I'll be in Maya. Okay. So it has to be a bit of a zing. So the emotion has been stimulated, so not just on the platform of intellectual understanding, but implementation, so that we can experience. It is the perfection because it gives you direct experience. So we don't read and understand the books as much as we experience the books. It's the experience. We want the experience of associating with Krishna. We want the experience of being with Krishna in his pastimes. We want to experience. That's what we want. That's what the books are. That's the opportunity that we're being presented with. You can have a Krishna experience if you want. You can directly interact with Krishna. You can be with him right now with the cowhead boys. You can do that. You can access. That's what you can do. So any questions or comments? Yes, Javapuru.
Thank you very much for casting nice illumination on Srila Prabhupada's purport. So one phrase that caught me in Srila Prabhupada's purport was one has to receive the message by oral reception. So generally in the English language, oral reception means through the ear. But we've been talking about the necessity for it to go into the heart. So, is when Srila Prabhupada talks about oral reception in relationship to reading, then what is he talking about? The subtle sense of hearing rather than the gross sense?
Well, yeah, because hearing. So, just to clarify the question, just to make sure I understand it, and everyone else understands it as well. Jaravasa was asking when the term oral reception, this knowledge has to be received by oral reception. Is that referring to the sound vibration going into the physical ear, or is it referring to the sound vibration going into the heart? Is that right? Yeah. So I don't know the exact reference, I can find it, but it refers to the holy name. When you chant the holy name, the first thing that happens is it goes into the heart, then it comes out onto the tongue, then it goes through the ear. Anyone ever heard that before? I can find where it is. So into the heart, onto the tongue, and then into the ear. So, what's interesting with the subtle body is, with the spiritual body is, the ears can smell things, the heart can taste things, the nose can say things. All the senses are interchangeable. It's like these people, they have out-body experiences. When they have an out-body experience, They don't just see straight ahead, they can see everything. They can see all around. So we're like a little soul sent inside. And you know the periscope comes down? So the periscope comes down for the soul, and it's looking through the eyes. And then the periscope comes down, or the headoscope comes down for the ears. And then it's hearing. But the unfettered soul, clear of the entanglement of the body, can hear, can taste, can see everything in an unfettered way. And what that is Krishna consciousness. That you become conscious, aham evasham eva agre. You become conscious that Krishna is everything. And that anything that you're seeing as not Krishna is as an illusory energy. Anything that you can see, you see this microphone, but you don't see that as Krishna, then that's as illusory energy. If you see that it's Krishna's energy, then you're seeing things for what they really are. So immersing the consciousness. I mean, using words like saturated, become saturated in knowledge. It's not generally. You don't think of being saturated. You acquire knowledge, you retain knowledge, you remember knowledge, you regurgitate knowledge. You never get saturated. You only get saturated by knowledge in a dimension where it's no longer restricted anymore by material limitation. So we're saying hearing, we're meaning perceiving, we're meaning becoming conscious of. If you become conscious of me, you can become conscious by seeing, you can become conscious by, but the result is the same, that once you become immersed in Krishna, then all the senses become involved anyway. Whether it goes through the ear, or whether you're taking prashadam, or whether you're smelling the aroma of the incense, once you become aware that that's Krishna, then the whole consciousness becomes absorbed. And so yeah, the real hearing process is what's going into the heart. Otherwise, you could go through the superficiality of hearing. You roll down the window. How do we get to such and such? Oh, you go up there, take a right, take a left, then go to the second hill, take a left, then a right, then go past Tesco's, take your third left, second right, fourth left, and then third right. Oh, okay, thanks a lot. And then you roll the window up and you say, what was that? Because you weren't able to retain it, you see. I mean, you physically heard it, but it didn't really go into the heart, When you actually hear something, when it really goes into the heart, you don't forget. It's in for good, And there's certain statements we've heard, certain classes we've been in, certain lectures, and something's gone in and it's hit the heart, and it's there for good. It'll not go away. And they have become a associate. There's no loss or diminution, but it's aligning ourselves so that it can go through. It doesn't get blocked along the way. You hear something and you deflect it with the false ego. Oh, he's just saying that, or he's on the trick, or I've heard that one before. And then it doesn't get in, it gets deflected by the false ego or some mundane conception. So the vibration goes boing, boing, doesn't actually go in. But if we can align everything and then hear it submissively, we can go right in. And then really hit the heart. They say the first symptom of the flowering of the hearing process is the ability to put into practice what you hear. So if you want to analyze, if you went to your ability to hear center, say they had a center in Les Mahego, and it was set up by the National Health Service because the people not doing things properly. So they built this new thing now. The National Health Service workers are there, and you come in, and they're going to test how well you can hear things, how well it's going, and then they'll say something to you. What was that? See, does it actually go into the heart? So the way that they're able to tell us, they'll say certain things, and then observe you on CCTV, and see if you're implementing what you just heard. That's how you'll know that the hearing process is starting to flower. So as sadhakas, it is our responsibility to hear properly so that it can go in very deeply and affect us very deeply. So So whether we're reading or we're chanting or we're associating, we're conversing with each other. One of the easiest ways to improve your chanting is just to sit down with some devotees and talk about your chanting. I find chanting was important to do that.
So a question online by Mary Mataji. How can I guard against interpretation when reading? How can I be sure I'm not misunderstanding?
So Mary's asking, how can we hear, how can we read and safeguard against interpreting what we're reading? And how can we know that we're actually understanding what we're reading? So that's a nice question. So we can take it for granted that when we're hearing things that we are interpreting, because we're not fully pure in our consciousness. We're personally speaking, I'm affected by the modes of ignorance and the mode of passion, so they act as filters, so that what we're hearing is coming through, but we have our own conception of what it is we're hearing. And then Srila Prabhupada goes to painstaking lengths to clarify so that we don't misinterpret. And then we have the association of the devotees. And by the association of the devotees, then they can confirm, I was reading this and I was just wondering, does that mean this? I mean, just a very simple thing. Before I joined the temple, I'd heard that you should chant Hare Krishna, and I got some beads. And so I was chanting Hare Krishna on the beads, and I was thinking, how can I do 16? I was like, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And I was thinking, well, to do it really fast would be rude, you know? It's rude. You should do it properly. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And then when I came to the temple, I was wondering what the devotees were doing. What are they doing? They're chanting Hare Krishna. Really? Oh, is that how you do it? So I'd heard, and I'd misinterpreted. I'd misinterpreted completely, and I was thinking, how could you get 16 rounds? It'd take you all day to do that. It was taking me like a good 45 minutes to chant one round. In fact, it was like I kept thinking Krishna was making the beat go further away. Every time I was trying to get to it, I was like, Krishna's running around the other way here. Can't get near the Krishna beat. And then I was in Japan watching the devotees, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Oh, okay, so that's... So there'll be so many, that's why the association of devotees is so important, because you will get the wrong end of the stick so many times, you know, trying to do things with devotion, but we need to see how that, and that's why Srila Prabhupada, if Srila Prabhupada had just written the books and fired them over, just give everyone these books, they'll work it out from reading the books. It wouldn't have been enough. Srila Prabhupada had to come and show us everything, how to do everything. Practically how to do it. So that's essential. That's why the association of devotees is so important. If you don't have that, then there was one devotee in Russia who was passing out these stapled books. They were stapled together, photocopy and stapled together. And he was passing them out, and the devotee said, "Oh, Hari Bol, Prabhu." I said, Hari what? Hari Bol. Do you want to come over for some prasadam? Prasadam? You're going to have halva and puris. And they realized he didn't have a clue. All that happened was he'd read the book, I think it was the Bhagavad Gita, photocopied it, and stapled it together and thought, I'm going to pass these out. This is such a far out thing, I'm going to pass them out. But he didn't know what Hari Bol Prabhu was, except my humble obeisance halava, prasadam. He didn't know what all this was. So it's so important to come into the association, isn't it? So important to come and live in amongst the associated devotees. And, you know, this is how you do devotional service. Prabhu, you're spacing out. Yeah, you're spacing out. Because devotional service is, there's a certain intensity, there's a certain urgency. If you just, oh yeah, that's right. No, that's not devotional service. You've got to be fixed. You've got to know what you're doing. You've got to be with it. You know? So you wouldn't know from just reading the books. You need the association of devotees. And the devotees will give you pretty quick feedback if you've got the wrong end of the stick. You know, I'm respecting Prashadam. It's going cold. No, but I've got to respect the Prabhu. And everyone else has finished Prashadam, and there's no seconds for you. You'll learn fast how to respect Prashadam. Yes, Masterji.
Prabhupada said we should study the books threadbare and discuss the association with devotees. So it may not just be one answer, it could be from different angles, there's different angles of vision, and then one find something that's particularly relevant to themselves that they can grasp and work on or expand on.
Yeah, that's another reason why Masterji is saying we have to study the books threadbare, and there's multi-meanings to the books, and by the association of devotees we can fluff it out, we can find it out. It's called Chintamani Dham. Krishna Dharma's wife refers to it as unpacking. So you'll see a word like legitimate, and you can unpack it. There's a lot in that, because illegitimate, if something's illegitimate, it's pretty bad, right? If you call somebody illegitimate, it's like, it's a big, so there's a lot in the words and the way that they've been phrased, and that also by associating with devotees, that can help us to unpack so many different ways of looking at it. Prabhupada said we should study the books from all different angles of vision. And also your own angle of vision will change according to how you're situated in the modes of material nature in that particular day. So one thing will strike you on one day, and then on another day, the same statement will strike you in another way. And it can be the same statement. So the books are very deep, and the meanings are multi-layered as well, because how a neophyte reads and understands will be different to how a Majjhima understands, will be different to how an Uttama Adhikari will understand. According to your level of purity will determine your depth of absorption and perception and realization. It'll all vary. And then, of course, every devotee has his own unique relationship with Krishna as well. And so his dialogue with Krishna is maybe a little bit different. Just like Krishna speaks to all the animals, he knows all the languages. So he speaks to a little frog, and then he speaks to a snake, and he speaks to a cow, and he knows the language. So he knows our language as well. There's a certain way that Krishna can put things to us that especially means something to us. And to somebody else, they're like a different species, because they're conditioned by the modes of nature in another way. And then when that person's speaking to you, it's like, that doesn't make sense to me, because it's a different language. There's a book here, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. There's two different languages going on. The woman says, "You never take me out," and the Martian, "I took you out 72 hours and 32 minutes ago." But what she meant was, "You haven't taken me out for 72 hours and 32 minutes." But never take me out was the way of conveying the emotion behind the fact that it was 3 days since you've taken me out. So the same thing's being said, they're in a different language. So,
one can also pray for the understanding, and then sometimes you can open a book and it's there, you hear a lecture and it's pain. And so if you pray, then the answer comes by hearing and chanting.
Yeah, that happened to me in Bangor, in Wales, in the church. At that time, I was trying to settle down with somebody, and I was looking for a bit of direction. And I didn't have a book with me at the time, but the Holy Bible was there. So I remember I had the Bible, and I was like, "Oh, please, Lord, give me an answer. I need to find the ideal spouse. She must be out there somewhere." And I opened it up, and you'll never guess where it opened up at. Corinthians. It took me ages to find it later on, actually. I was trying to find it. Corinthians. "The man who marry doeth well, but he that doesn't doeth better. And then the next statement, or better to marry than burn in the fire of lust.